Hodge family, it's time for us to stand up and show the world who we are. Give me an H.
A. Give me an O.
O. Give me a D.
D. Give me a D. G.
Give me a E.
E.
What is that spell? What is that spell? What is that spell? What is that spell? What is that spell?
Ah.
Give me an H.
A. Give me an O.
Give me a D.
D. Give me a D. G.
Give me a E.
E.
What is that spell? What is that spell? What is that spell? What is that spell? What is that spell?
Ah.
All right, so we are here,
Yeah.
here in Buffalo, New York, and I'm here with Darlene. So
Yes.
on behalf of the Hodge Family Reunion, 20 chapter, I guess you could say the Atlanta chapter,
Yes.
right? 2024. Thank you for allowing us to have this opportunity to have a conversation with you.
Oh, you're more than welcome.
So we're here just to kind of paint the scene for everybody. We're here in Buffalo, New York, in your mom's house.
Yes.
Your mom just had a beautiful, what would you call it?
Life celebration.
Life celebration on yesterday. And how many people you think were maybe there?
I would say approximately maybe 80 people.
80 people. And I was talking to your mom about this earlier, but how many states did people come out and show out for your mom?
Oh my gosh, there were
You got
Tennessee,
Georgia, Tennessee,
yeah, Michigan,
Ohio.
So that's actually 4. I think it was 4 states were represented.
Yep. Ohio, Georgia.
Georgia,
Yep. So that's
Michigan,
uh-huh.
Ohio. Yeah.
And then Florida. Right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So
Florida.
it's 5.
That's right.
5
yeah.
states. That's amazing.
It is. It is. Gosh, and we just appreciate the support from everyone. You
Yeah.
know.
Having to come and so who came up with the idea of the life celebration?
I actually came up with the idea of the life celebration because my mom missed the Hodge family reunion in September of 22.
Okay.
And she was ill at that time. So, and I know how much she loves her family and how much she really wished she would have been there, you know. So I figured this is a good time.
Yeah.
And, you know, so I figured this was a good idea. And I know she would just love to have all her family around her.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you for putting that together. Just like even seeing her throughout last night and today, like the smile on her face, like she's still in such good spirit
Yeah, she is.
about that. And then, so I know here in Buffalo, you have actually did a little bit of the family reunion, is that right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so how did you get started, like working with the family reunion? And there's even a Buffalo chapter here, right?
Yes, there is a Buffalo chapter.
So let's start from the beginning. So were you born in Buffalo or?
Actually, no, I was born in Mason, Tennessee.
You're from Mason too.
I was born in Mason, Tennessee, and my mother and I, we moved here, I think when I was about a year old.
Okay. You know what? Why did I not know you were from Mason? I thought you were just strictly New York.
No,
but you're
I
from
was
Mason.
actually born at home.
Okay.
At the original home house.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Born at the house.
Yes, I was born at the house. So that's a lot of information right there.
Wow.
Yes,
Okay.
I was born at home.
So from Mason, you moved to New York, and you've been here since then. Okay. That's pretty cool. So do you enjoy kind of going back to?
I do, yes. I
Mason?
enjoy going back. And I know the last few times that I've been there, you know, I always say I want to go back to where the original home is in Mason, which I know it's not far from where your mother lives at, your mother's home. So
yeah, I think it's like a field or like kind of like a just like grass or so back there. I think I've heard them speak of it or with that. So yeah, absolutely. Just being able to go back to that land that we have back there. What's your earliest remember about? Like, do you remember? What do you remember?
The earliest I remember, probably a trip back to Tennessee. I want to say I was probably about maybe 7, 8 years old, and I believe it was probably just myself, mom, and Troy.
Okay.
And we actually rode with somebody else. You know, somebody else drove us down there. So, and
long drive.
Long drive.
Long
A
drive.
super long drive, and you know, it was a long drive, and I remember as we approached, the house got up, and you could just see the chickens and the farm animals, you know,
Wow.
in the field and whatnot, and the chickens walking around, and there was a dog,
Just running free.
Granddaddy Calvin Hodge had a couple dogs or whatever, a few dogs that were just roam freely. Yeah, about the farm.
You know, that's the first time that I've heard that about like Granddaddy and the dogs, because I like dogs. So that's probably where I got it from.
Probably so, yeah.
And what do you remember about Granddad?
Oh gosh, what do I remember about Granddad? I remember he used to wear overalls.
Okay.
He wore
Like
overalls.
blue?
Yes, blue jean overalls.
Okay.
I remember him being a very tall man.
Okay.
He would wear hats, straw hats,
Straw hats.
and he drove a truck.
Okay, like a pickup truck?
A pickup truck. He drove a pickup truck, and it was an older model pickup truck. And I remember that it was special when we would, like cousins, we would all get together, and I think it was maybe like on Saturdays or every few days. You know, the weather would be so hot, but it was such a special treat just to get in the back of the pickup truck. All the kids, he would load us in the back of the pickup truck.
How many do you think were in the back?
I want to say probably maybe about 7 of us.
Wow.
And we would go to, sometimes we would go to a local, we would go to Covington or Mason for like a treat or whatever, you know, you get like an ice cream cone or something like that. But they also had, I remember back then, they also had like neighbors who sold, there was a neighbor who sold candy and treats out of her house, actual candy bars.
Like the candy lady.
The candy lady, right? She was the candy
In the
lady.
country?
In the country, yes. And I'm sure some of my cousins that are my age, I know they're gonna remember the candy lady.
So that was like the big deal, was to go to the candy lady, and she would have the candy, because you couldn't get the candy from anywhere else, really?
No. I mean, because it wasn't like, a lot of times they weren't like ready to like just drive you to Mason. So, you know, you could, you know, she wasn't far, you know, you could just, you know, did we walk? But I'm pretty sure we actually were in the truck though. You know, somebody would drive us there, but it wasn't far from the home.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So, and the other kids were in there, like your other cousins or different things like that. Who do you back to the trips, going to Mason in the back of the truck and the candy lady, and those times there. So how often would you go to Mason from like New York?
How often would we go to Mason? I would say while visiting, you know, for a family trip, probably like twice a week.
Twice a week. Okay.
About twice a week, yeah.
And so what else do you remember about Mason that stands out to you?
What else I remember about Mason? I can remember, I think they had like a juke joint that sold like barbecue.
Is it Bozo's?
Could be, yeah.
I think Bozo's is still there, actually.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I remember in Covington, well, in Mason, I'm a little bit, there's Covington and Mason, but Mason, I just remember it more or less like Gunsmoke. It was really rural town.
Really rural.
But it had, I remember like I said, the juke joints, and there was like open markets, like an open market, so to speak, where you would see produce and that type of thing being sold out in the open.
Kind of like a flea market.
Like
type
a flea
thing.
market type thing, I guess.
People can bring their items and sell them like that.
Yes.
Okay. So from Mason to Buffalo. So how was it like growing up in Buffalo?
How was it growing up in Buffalo? It was, I went to public school, and back then, when I was going to school, like elementary school, junior high school, we walked to school. There were no school buses.
Okay. Was it a long walk?
It wasn't, not too far. It wasn't too far. We would actually go home at lunchtime.
Okay, so
And-
close enough for you to go to lunch.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but if anybody know anything about Buffalo weather and Buffalo winters, to be walking back and forth, go home at lunchtime or whatever. But I guess we were just tough kids, though.
Okay.
You got used to it, and you dressed for the weather, and you really didn't. You couldn't disagree with it or
Yeah.
whatever. You just had to do what you had to do.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So when you talk about we, is this your brother, your siblings?
My siblings
Okay.
and
Tell me your siblings.
my siblings are Maurice, Troy,
Okay.
who's right underneath me,
Okay.
and then there's Maurice and my brother
You're
Kevin.
the oldest.
I'm the oldest,
Okay.
yes. And our youngest brother was Kevin.
Okay. So four.
There
of
were
you.
4 of us.
Four
Yes.
of us. Okay.
Mhm.
And so you would you would have to keep everybody in line walking to school.
Pretty
Were you put
much.
in charge?
Yeah, somewhat. Yes.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
And how is
yeah.
it having like three younger brothers?
A lot
back
of
then?
a lot of responsibility.
Okay.
It was a lot of responsibility. I felt.
Who was the troublemaker back then?
I would say it would have to be Troy, even though he's only like a year and a half younger than I am. But Troy was always a bit of a troublemaker. He yeah. Troy was, a little different. He was a free spirit, He was a free spirit, yes.
Well, cool. So growing up in Buffalo, school there, and then so I know, like, were you able to see like how Buffalo was in your mom's eye, because she grew up in Mason, right?
Yeah.
And then so now she's here in Buffalo.
Mhm.
So
Growing
it
up-
seems like family has just been really important to you, right?
Yes.
With that, and then just kind of talking about the family and the family reunion. I know your mom told me that she hasn't missed a family reunion, which
Mhm.
I think is awesome, except for the one last year.
Yes.
And so, tell me, like, how did you get started in doing a Buffalo chapter for the family reunion?
I got started, I would say, my first reunion where I was somewhat, the chairperson or the head person in charge or
Mhm.
whatever. Probably, I want to say maybe about 20 years ago.
Now, were you kind of put in charge, or
I
did
was-
you appoint yourself to be in
I
charge?
was kind of put in charge.
Okay.
Because I think the very first couple reunions that we had here in Buffalo, my mother was more or less in charge.
Right.
And I believe that reunion, I know for a fact, it was at the town restaurant and hotel in
Okay.
downtown Buffalo on Main Street.
Okay.
And I want to say that was the first reunion that we had, that was the first reunion that we had, and it was at a hotel. Guests actually stayed, the family members stayed
Wow.
at the hotel.
Okay.
And I believe we also had a banquet, or regardless, we had like the banquet or dinner
Mhm.
right there. And that was in downtown Buffalo.
And that was the first reunion.
No, it wasn't the actual first reunion.
the first reunion.
I think that's the first
that we started the
reunion
banquet.
that we started the
Hotel
the
banquet.
hotel type thing,
Okay.
the hotel setting.
Okay.
I might be mistaken, but I think I'm pretty sure that was. So
Okay.
that had to be, I'm gonna guess and say, I believe the very first reunion was in Tennessee about 1980, and later on somebody might be able to correct me on that.
Okay.
So I'm thinking that would have been about 1984.
Okay. So
Yeah,
not
when
that long
when it
after.
was here. It
The
wasn't-
first time it was
yes.
in. Okay.
Yeah, not
And
too
then-
long after the initial Hodge family reunion right in Mason, Tennessee.
Right.
Mhm.
It was second year, and then your mom, she just wanted to take up the ideal of the reunion being here, or how did that come about?
She, how did that come about? Well, actually, what I think they decided that the responsibility, or that the family members
Mhm.
would share it, and by sharing it, it would move from one state to another.
Okay.
Yeah, and then all the work that's involved, it wouldn't just always be the responsibility
people
of the
each
same
and every
people
time
doing it
like
like
that.
in Tennessee. So,
Okay. So that's kind of where we got that ideal of rotating reunions
absolutely,
came from.
that's
like
where,
that.
yeah.
And then it's great to hear that the ideal of the banquet style came from Buffalo.
Yeah, I
with
believe
that
so.
from the hotel. So
Mhm.
that's pretty cool there. So your first reunion, that you were in charge was, you said, about 20 years ago.
I could have been more. I would say the very first reunion that I was, about 20 years ago.
Okay.
Could be a little bit more, yeah.
So 20 years ago, and tell me about it. Like, was it tough? Because reunions are tough putting it together.
Oh my gosh.
But that was your first time.
It was my very first time.
And it's my first time.
Yeah.
So what advice would you give me from first timer to first time? Because
Oh
you're
my
a pro
God.
at it now, and
Oh
I'm just getting
gosh,
started.
Yeah, no, I would say my advice to you would be get a couple good core people to
Okay.
work with
Mm-hmm.
that you can depend on, that don't mind, really working hard, and agree, that everybody can agree on certain things or
Yeah.
whatever.
Agree to disagree too.
That's right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yep.
Or agree to disagree.
Yep.
But just to have a common goal.
Mm-hmm.
I think in the initial planning stages, you don't necessarily need like 10, 12 people.
Yeah.
But I think as time goes on, for a family reunion, then you begin to see where you'll need somebody, like far as the cooking, if there's
Yep.
cooking involved, or just like the what do you want to call it? Like when people first come to the reunion, that, like, say Friday evening,
Yeah.
like a reception or whatever,
Like
a
welcome
meeting,
in.
a welcoming crew or whatever. So there's going to be a lot of different. I feel like there's many different little tasks that people that are very important, because I don't think there's anything that you should forget about,
Right.
or even, I think even something as far as like making signs or just making people aware, because
Right.
one thing that I noticed about a reunion or any type of gathering is that if people don't know, if you leave that space open where they have questions, they're going to target a few key people.
Yeah.
They're going to target a few key people, and you don't want to be overwhelmed. So I think that's where books, like the reunion book, or information that's given to them, or they can see it's displayed in a way
Right.
where
The
they
more
know.
you know, the
Exactly.
better with
Yeah.
that.
And then that way that frees up those key people. You're not answering questions and addresses. You're not telling them, oh, well, the local Denny's restaurant is around the corner.
Right. You got an actual address where they can look
you
at
just,
it like
yeah.
that. So if you had to go back to all of the reunions that you've ever been through, right? And even that, well, let's just start with what you attended. What's your favorite family reunion moment, and why?
Oh my gosh, I think my favorite family reunion memory would be the very first reunion,
Okay.
and there was the picnic took place.
This is in Mason.
It took place in Mason.
Is it the original house?
No, it wasn't the original house.
Okay.
It's the house where your mom lives now.
Okay, so that's where the first family reunion is.
That's where the very first family reunion was at.
Okay.
And that is at Mason Malone Road.
Mason Malone Road.
Mason Malone Road.
Yep.
Yes, I remember that, the address, Mason Malone Road, and I remember the phone number too. But anyways, my most fond memory is the granddaddy or the men were barbecuing a pig or something in the ground. They had this. I guess it was a pig, and it was staked. It was staked. They had it on, and they were barbecuing. I just remember all of the.
Was the pig like rotating around like this?
It was rotating. It was rotating.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Did you have some pig?
I probably did. I probably did.
Okay.
Yeah, I probably did.
It probably was good.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Everything was good. You
Yeah.
know, had some good cooks. And the other thing that I remember is from that reunion. You know, there used to be a time with families, we would travel when we would visit Tennessee. It was common to have maybe 20 people sleeping at a house.
Wow. Oh, yeah.
You know, and on what we called them, what Grandma and Aunt Bren, your mom, would call. They would say, "Oh, just make a pallet, get your pallet." You know, and I guess you couldn't say. I don't know if you could say that to people now if they come to your house and they can't find a hotel.
Right. They like a pallet.
A pallet. You mean to say just get a blanket or sometimes it would maybe be. I remember in one of the back bedrooms. it might be four of us girls in that bed sleeping, you know, and how did we sleep in that bed?
Right.
At that time, we were probably all tiny, like
Yep.
like Stacy's girls are now. And,
Uh-huh.
there would be kids in the bed, people in the bed, on the floor.
Wow. Because
All
I
the
remember
girls
the
would be in-
couches that let out and they turned into beds.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember like every room had a couch. And the couch would let out where it could probably really sleep maybe like two. But if you had to push it, you could probably get
Yeah.
3 or 4 in there.
Absolutely.
So I do remember like when family used to come visit, like everybody would be in a room. It would be jam packed.
Oh yeah.
But it was fun though.
It was fun. It was fun. I remember all the canned pops.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there would just be food everywhere. You know,
Yeah.
and it would just be food and family everywhere. And
Was there any games at the first reunion? Like, what did you guys do for entertainment?
I don't remember any games, but it was just music. I remember music.
Music.
Just dance. And, back then, they had a way of, the kids would, you could play and, there used to be a saying, stay out of grown people's faces or whatever, So, kids were,
Right.
I think, our family, they did a really good job of raising children and, kind of steering them in the right direction or whatever and keeping them kids. And that's important, is allow children to be children
Yep.
as long as possible.
Yep, absolutely. So we got the first reunion, we got the pig smoking, floating around, like that's definitely a sight for us to see now. But we've had reunions in different states and different places. So what would you say like your most like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that happened at the reunion moment?
Oh wow. A moment where
Your mouth just dropped.
oh my goodness, that's a good one.
Could be maybe somebody on the dance floor, or maybe a moment that you can remember from the banquet, or an important speech, or maybe it was an event.
Oh, look at me! I just lit up.
I
didn't
know, right?
I just lit up. You know what? And this is not. It's not anything that's like shocking. But one of the reunions that I remember, and I just felt this moment was. It was just, and I'm like, this is what it's all about.
Mm-hmm.
We were in. We might have been in Ohio, and what they did at the banquet. Whoever was kind of like speaking or the but anyways, they asked everyone. They just kind of took the time after they played the song "Family Reunion," and that song played, and it just seemed like it just filled the room with a sweet spirit. After that song went off, and then they had everyone. They went from table to table, took the time to go from table to table. And I won't say everyone stood up, but I bet 90% of the people in that room stood up and said who they were, who their parents were, who their grandparents were, and I think moments like that are so important because, that's an opportunity to know who the people are or the person is that's maybe sitting right next to you. So I think just that a lot of times we can get caught up in the music, we can get caught up in the dancing, but that was an opportunity where we learned and I think people feel it, it makes people feel good to get up and say what your name is. Who's your mom? Who's your grandmother? And that was a time, and it's a teaching moment.
Yeah, and you can really see how the family is growing, because I'm a grandchild of this, my parents are this, and you can really see that tree just blossoming with that.
Because a lot of, and excuse me, I didn't want, because I think it's very common now, I won't say it is common now, where children don't always, understand that, okay, this is my grandmother, this is my great-grandmother. And like right now, I have 5 generations, my mom, myself, my daughter, my granddaughter, and my great-granddaughter.
That's amazing.
And kids don't always, but it's up to us to teach them. It's up to us to give them that experience, and it's up to us to tell them when you walk into a room, you say hello, that type of thing. And even though it might not be your aunt, when you see an elder or whatever, you see somebody that's older, because I know my mother would never allow us to refer to an adult as Viola. or whatever. It had to be Aunt Viola,
Yep.
or even if it was a cousin, an older cousin, you could say Aunt whoever, or but you had,
Yeah.
or you
Have-
would
have
say
that respect piece.
right, or you would say Kun, like for a cousin. Like now it's common cuz, but back in the day it was Kun, like it would Kun Michael, you know.
Still
But-
that formal greeting at the beginning of
it was absolutely, especially if that person had some age over you, you know, and that, you know, I just
Because even with like us, we're first cousins, but there's an age gap between
absolutely,
us.
yeah.
So like having such a big family and having a wide range of first cousins, what advice would you give your first cousins? The younger first
The
cousins.
younger first cousins, what advice? Oh my gosh. You guys are just so smart. I'm just sitting here watching you with all this technology, and I'm like, oh my goodness, I need to, like, some of this needs to rub off on me. You know, what advice is that, you know, I would just say, what advice really is, you know, you're all educated, get whatever education that you have now, get to know your family, you know, take time with your family, and, you know, just do those things that you like to do, travel, save money.
Save money.
Save
Yes,
money.
Money is important.
Save money.
Yeah.
Save money. Absolutely. I think save money and, you know, live within your budget, you know, live within your means, you know,
Live within your
that
means.
new Gucci bag or whatever, it's nice or whatever, but you also need to treat yourself too.
Yeah, definitely treat yourself. You've done a lot of research when it comes to the heritage of that family, of this family, and that's really awesome. And definitely, I know that you have found out some really cool things. But I would just love for you to share and just tell us, you know, some of the research that you found out. How did you find it out? And we'll just start there.
Okay. Well, I would through ancestry.com.
Okay.
You know, I had a membership for a few years, and you know, I just kept digging and, you know, to find out, you know, to learn more about the ancestry of the Hodge family. But I do want to say that Elaine Rivers Smith, she really detailed. She did a really in-depth, you know, and she was able to take it back to a slave. I can't think of the woman's name. That was she was a slave in North Carolina or South Carolina.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So she was, which would have been like granddaddy Calvin Hodge, maybe great grandmother or whatever.
Wow.
Or great
So
grandmother. Way back. Yeah.
That's
But
crazy. So you guys were able to track to the slave times.
Yes.
And I didn't even think there was a lot of documentation back then, but
Right.
you guys were able to find that.
Mhm.
And then throughout the years, you were able to see and how things migrated from there. And so from that slave, were you able to find out who her children were?
I believe, yes, it is. It's documented who her child was. And she did not, the record shows, if I'm not mistaken, there weren't a lot of kids that were documented, you know, but she was, and I believe there was a man, and it could have been based on the record, because the ages were, you know, back then the census takers did not always do their best far as, you know, even spelling names correctly.
Right,
and you
okay.
would see that like maybe maybe 1860, your name might have been Michael, you know, and they would spell it one way, and then 4 years later it would be Michael. They would change your last name altogether. So it wasn't like they didn't put a lot of effort into recording our. So you have to kind of piece together and guess, you know, whatever, based on age, date of birth, that type of year, and county and whatnot, whatever. But
So when you go on Ancestry.com and you find out that you're able to trace back to a slave, like how does that make you feel as a Hodge?
oh my gosh, it's very exciting. It's very exciting
Because you can directly say, like, my great-great-grandma, like, I know who she is, and she was a slave.
absolutely, you can see that. You know, you could see that. I know, like, with even like with Grandma Roxy, I could see, you know, with her as an only child, you know, and then it makes you understand, you know, it really makes you understand why people make the choices that they do when you're an only child. You know, sometimes I think maybe it was important to her to have so many children
So
around,
many children.
and her love for family, you know, especially when your mom has passed away, when you're a baby, and your grandmother has passed away. So, you know, there's events in our lives that make us more value the family
Absolutely.
so much, you know.
And that would explain why the family is so big.
That's right. Exactly.
Because we have, it's a lot of,
Yes.
it's, Granddad Calvin and Grandma Roxy, was it 20, 21?
I think there was 21 altogether.
Wow, it's crazy.
Yeah, 21 siblings all together.
You really don't hear that
Combined.
these days.
Combined, you don't.
You
No.
hear it back then.
Yeah,
But that would explain why family is important, because
Uh-huh.
it was definitely important
yeah.
to Grandma in terms of that. When we think about the word family and just family in general, like, what does that mean to you?
What does that mean to me? Family, it just really, what it really means to me is that I know that I'm connected biologically, and emotionally.
Shared characteristics.
Absolutely. And when you walk into a room, you can look around and you see facial features. You
Yep.
see things that are, you can see yourself in some people, you know, and it just really means a lot. It really means a lot to have family, you know, and, you know, some people are not that fortunate. And I think that's why
So true.
it's not, you know, and I can see where, like with my mom, family is really important to her. Is very important to her, and I think it's something that just kind of trickles down, you know, because I know that Grandma Roxy, Granddaddy Calvin, it was so important to them, and even if you go back before them, I think it was very important.
Important
you know?
as well.
And it doesn't matter, you know. Sometimes you have. You might have, and I hate to use the word, that's a word that my mother was like, I don't never want to hear you talk about step this or step that.
Okay.
Family is family.
Family is family.
Family is family. And that's how I was brought up. And I think we were all brought up like that.
Absolutely.
Because that's how we were all brought up, you know, and, you know, there's no division.
Nope, no division.
There's no division.
Family is family. Whether it's the good, the bad,
Yeah.
the rough times, family is family.
That's right.
That's awesome. So, we definitely want to thank you for allowing, I definitely want to thank you for just the amount of effort and expertise and diligence and patience that you have done with the family.
Thank you.
Taking this experience of running a family reunion is not easy. As you can see it, and you have many more years than I have in regards to that, but it's not easy. But I can definitely say that I'm able to look up to you and say that you've done it, and I have looked at and researched past reunions and some of the things that you've done, and just the highlight and the attention to detail does not go unnoticed with
Thank
that.
you.
So thank you for allowing us to have a conversation,
Okay.
allowing us to pick your brain a little bit and document this for years to come.
Oh, that's
So
wonderful.
I do believe in giving people their flowers, always giving them their flowers, and when praise and credit is due, I like to give that. So just on behalf of the Hodge family, 2024 Atlanta committee, I want to let you know that we thank you and we appreciate you.
Oh, thank you, thank you. I've always been honored and felt it a privilege to do it, you know. And anything I can do to help out, or information or whatever, or just listen, I can listen.
Yes, we may
I
need
can just
you.
listen.
May need you. I'm
I
sure.
can listen because
You just, I know, just a wealth of knowledge. So don't be afraid if I call you and I be like, hey,
Absolutely.
you know, like, what do we do here? Or what do you know, what's
Yeah.
going on here with that? Because I can definitely need, like, people to depend on and resources and outlets.
that's right. Then sounds
awesome.
good.
All right.
All
Well,
right, and thank you for interviewing me.
No, thank you for allowing me to.
Okay.